All right, so we're going to look at organic chem. So the very starting chapter of this organic chem, it talks about crude oil and fossil fuel. So these are some of the main points. First thing we need to know that, right, all the crude oil, okay, are mixture of hydrocarbon. Actually, most of them are alkanes. All right, it's a mixture of alkanes. All right, and of course, mixture means they can be separated, and one of the technique, okay, is your fractional distillation. Right? They are liquids. They got different boiling point. You separate them. So what we need to know, now you don't really need to know the name of the fractions, right? But what you know that, at the top of the fraction is actually the lowest boiling point, right? This is what we have learned in fractional distillation. The lowest boiling point will be separated first because it will definitely be the first one that got boiled, right? And we also need to know that this lowest boiling point is linked to the size. It's a smaller size. Right, so mainly this liquefied petroleum gas may be containing one carbon to four carbon is a mixture. All right, that means after separation, it's still a mixture, but of course, it's more purified as compared to before it is separated. And crude oil can only be useful after they are separated. If not, they are not useful. Right, we have to separate them into the useful fractions. All right, so as the smaller size means the smallest number of carbon. All right, the shortest chain. So of course, as you go down, right, the size increase because the number of carbon increase, therefore melting point, boiling point increase, right? And with this, okay, a few other properties will increase, like viscosity. Okay, viscosity increase. Viscosity basically means the how smooth the liquid flow. For example, if you've got half a bottle of water and half a bottle of oil, if you overturn them, water has less viscous because it flow faster, more smoothly. Okay, oil will take longer time, so it's more viscous. All right, the bigger the size, the stronger the intermolecular force of attraction. That's why it's harder to slide. And that's why it also require more energy to overcome. That's why you got higher melting point, boiling point, and the viscosity increase. But one thing that is different is the flammability decrease because bigger carbon means bigger piece of charcoal. Yeah, you got big piece charcoal, small piece charcoal. Of course, it's easier to burn a small piece of charcoal. That's why during barbecue, even though we may dirty your hand, we will still want to break them into smaller pieces. It's easier to burn. Right. That also means that actually, see, petrol as compared to diesel, all right, these are more, okay, at the top here are more higher efficiency for burning. Okay, because they're easy to burn, right? Higher efficiency in burning, therefore, they're higher demand. Right. Later part, you will learn a reaction called cracking, where we crack the bigger piece into smaller pieces. That means like your diesel can go through cracking to get your petrol, which is higher demand. All right. So what we really need to know here is generally the sequence, right, and then the uses. Okay. So you can see that most of them are used for fuel, except this naphtha. Right. They are raw material for chemical feedstock. That means from the naphtha, from this fraction, we will do some reaction, some processing, and then can be used to make other materials. And one of the most common materials that we use for is plastics. Okay, or even to some certain cosmetics. That's why there are certain products which are not used as a fuel, but they're called petrochemical products. All right. So that is the main thing that we just need to know for this part one, which is the fuel and the crude oil. You just need to remember the sequence, the users, and the general trend. In fact, this general trend you're talking about, lowest boiling, I mean, as a size, smaller size, lower boiling point, all right, shorter chain, okay, and the size increase, melting point, boiling point increase, viscosity increase, therefore, you know, and the flammability decrease. This will be a physical trend, a physical property for both the homologous series that you're going to learn. It will be similar explanation, right? So catch the next video for the alkanes and the alkenes. Thank you very much.